getting it set up. Redirecting to Facebook. All right, I think we are live.
Perfect.
On Facebook. Isn't technology grand?
When it works well, it's delightful.
When it works well. All right, so we're just going to wait a minute to see if we have folks who join us. Hopefully we will. Otherwise, they will catch us on the recording. We get a lot of people who show up afterwards and will watch this. But welcome, you guys. If you're watching this, say hello. Let us know that you can hear us so we don't have an entire conversation to ourselves and the audio wasn't working. Hasn't happened yet, but I always have to check. So if you're watching this, would you mind just posting in the comments, say hello. Let us know that you can hear this okay.
We can tell the entertaining story of the last time I did Facebook Live with Debbie and her internet connection dropped off. So
Oh, that's right. I was trying to remember who that happened with.
That was me. We did Facebook Live. I took on the role of you for a moment. So.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like it was seamless and I rejoined. Yeah, I think my whole internet just dropped. Yeah. And then I came back and there you were, just closing out a nice question. So that worked out really well. No one has commented that they can't hear us or that they can. So we're just going to assume you all can hear us. That's what we're going to go with. And I'm going to just take another minute to welcome everybody. So this is the Till Together Facebook page. We have so many new people in this group, which is awesome and exciting. So if this is your first Facebook Live, thank you for joining us. And I'm doing these about once a week now, and they're really fun. And actually, Amanda has done this with me once before. Bob is new, so we'll take it easy on you, although you're, I'm sure, a pro at Facebook Lives. So I'm going to take a minute to introduce myself, and then I'm going to formally introduce Amanda and Bob, and then we'll jump right in. And if you have questions about really anything, I'm not putting boundaries on questions because it's not every day we get someone from Understood to stop by. So just giving you guys a heads up. But if you're watching this and you have a question about learning differences, attention issues, education, any of the things we're talking about, just post them in the comments below. So I'm Debbie Reber. I'm the founder of Tilled Parenting, the Tilled Parenting podcast, and I'm the wrangler of community in this particular group. And I'm going to actually read your official bio, Amanda. So again, Amanda's likely no stranger to you all. She has been on my podcast a number of times. Most recently, we talked about her new book called What is Empathy? And we did a Facebook Live, and you guys can watch the recording here. And Amanda is a speaker and author, co-host of the N.O.T.E podcast, former classroom teacher and early intervention specialist, mom, and all-around wearer of many hats. Yes, you are always doing a million things. She also serves as writer and senior expert in family advocacy and education for Understood, where she teaches about using empathy as a tool to understand difference and embrace inclusion. Amanda is the author of 4 books, including the newly released What is Empathy? A bullying storybook for kids, The Everything Parents Guide to Special Education, the Everything Kids Learning Activities book, and On the Go Fun for Kids. She lives in coastal Maine with her family. And did I just read something on Facebook that you have another book coming out?
I do. I have a 5th book coming out. It just went up for pre-order yesterday. It's Adulting Made Easy, Things Someone Should Have Told You to Get Your Grown-Up Act Together. So it's all about, yeah. So I should add that to my bio, I think.
Yes. Congratulations. I did not know you were writing that. I feel like every time I blink, you've got a new something huge going on. So congratulations. And
thank you.
I look forward to hearing more about that. All right, Bob, it's your turn.
Great. I've never read the book, Debbie. There's nothing to read.
We'll beef you up in other ways, okay? Then we have Bob Cunningham. He's a nationally known education leader whose career has focused on students who learn and think differently. He serves as executive director of learning development at Understood, where he is a founding expert on learning and attention differences. Throughout his career, He has consulted with schools, organizations, and families on matters related to the education of diverse learners. He has also worked as a teacher, evaluator, and administrator in several public school districts. And what I didn't say is he's the co-host with Amanda of the N.O.T.E podcast, which is just a fantastic show. And you guys have done, you've done one season prior to Bob joining the team, and then you guys did a season together. If you haven't listened to it, just go check it out. You can listen to them over the course of a few days, and they're such good conversations. And they're very different from Tilt Parenting. They're more like, NPR-ish. They've got, you weave in voices of parents, and they're really well produced.
I think Tilt is very well produced, and it's just a different kind of conversation. I think we're just having different kinds of conversations.
Different.
Yeah.
Differences are good. All right. Well, thank you for that, Amanda. So you guys, welcome if you're watching this. I said this at the beginning in case you just joined us. We're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about Understood's new Take Note initiative, and we're going to actually give you a peek at what it looks like. I'm going to share my screen. We'll see how tech works for us today. And then also, but these guys are open to take questions. So if you do have a question while you've got them, please share it in the comments, and then I'll circle back and take questions at the end. So just before I share my screen, tell us what Take Note is. I did a podcast episode about it, but there are people who are going to watch this who haven't listened to it. So just what's your kind of introduction to Take Note?
You want to introduce it, Amanda?
No, I want you to. You didn't write any books. This is your opportunity.
There you go.
So while Amanda is writing, I'm thinking about how to introduce Take Note to everyone. Take Note is something that Understood developed with the American Academy of Pediatrics, and it's really a memory device. The N.O.T.E in N.O.T.E stands for Notice, Observe, Talk, and Engage. And this is basically a curated journey around noticing what's going on with your child, observing sort of in a systematic way so that you can recognize patterns, then talking to folks who might be able to help you understand what's going on, like pediatricians, like your spouses or your family members, all of those kind of folks, and then engaging with schools and with others to get the kind of support you need to help you with what's going on with your child. So it really targets kind of early journey parents, and provides a lot of great content and a lot of great tools, downloadables, that sort of stuff to help you on this journey.
That was very nicely done. Yeah. I mean,
it was succinct. Yes. Very nice. And I will say it is, you mentioned it's really especially helpful for early journey parents. I do think it can be helpful at any point because of some of the great tools that are included in it.
Right.
But there are so many people in this group who I've noticed, I've asked people to introduce themselves periodically, and there are a lot of folks with kids, I'd say under 5, and who are just kind of early on this journey. So it's especially relevant, which is exciting.
Doesn't mean it feels early journey to them. But
That's true.
It is.
Maybe that's the wrong word. It's like, oh no, I'm just at the beginning of this. But the great news is that there are so many tools and organizations and community support mechanisms for people new to this journey that were not around. I know when Amanda and I were.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
This is what we needed more years ago than I think I'd like to say right now.
Yeah. We don't have to go into that.
And I'll tell you, like from an educator standpoint, listen, if I'm running schools or if I'm in a classroom and that kind of stuff, and a parent uses this kind of tool, they're going to be so much more ready to engage with me and to really get that kind of support that they need. So it's exciting from both fronts.
I also think that's the piece of it that is really helpful too, is even if you're not just starting to figure this out, we all bounce between those different places in our journey, right? Things are going really well, and then you hit a road bump and you're like, this is something I've never seen before. And Take Note gives you the opportunity to go back and say, okay, here's something new that I'm observing. Can I sort through and get some more information on that too? Yeah. And I think that's really useful for a lot of us who are just kind of bouncing back and forth, especially during a pandemic, right? We're doing this during a pandemic where things are new and everybody's adjusting to new ways of being around each other. And I think our kids are showing things that we may not have seen before, and it's super helpful in that regard too.
Yeah. Well, let's show it to people.
Yep.
Let's
cool.
share the screen. All right, give me 1 second. I had it all set up and now I don't. Hold on 1 second. All right, you guys, make small conversation. Talk amongst yourselves.
It's a very pretty tool when you get the opportunity to see it. I'll start with that. And it has a really good video that can sort of walk you through what it is. And here it is.
There it is.
Hopefully you guys can see the screen. Yeah, so this is when you go to understood.org/take-note, take-note, this is the main page. So you want to just tell us about this video and that this is really like a portal. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So the video is just introducing the idea of take note, very much the way that Bob did. And it just kind of gives some more examples of things you might be seeing, behavior changes, struggling with reading, those kinds of things. And then as you keep going through, excuse me, it gives you the opportunity to see what each step does. So what are you noticing? That's that N, right? What are you noticing? And we'll show you what that might mean. And what I talked about this in the podcast episode we did a little bit. And what I like about this is it's sort of that it demystifies it, takes the jargoning out of it, right? So we're not talking about, I think that my child is having trouble with phonics. We're talking about like, I'm noticing my kid doesn't know how to rhyme, or I'm noticing that my child's really struggling to read and is feeling frustrated about it. So it's that really we're talking to you in the way you would talk to us, right?
Mm-hmm. So. It's such a good point. Yeah. And then the next step we have observe, which we're going to dive into deeper because for some reason this is my favorite one.
Oh, this is my favorite one too. I mean, and then talk. So actually, I said observe was my favorite, but talk is my favorite because it has conversation starters and so helpful, right? How many of you have ever sat out there and thought, I know what I'm seeing, but I don't know how to talk about it. I don't know how to start that conversation. I don't even know what to say to anybody. Having those conversation starters is just, to me, just the most important thing, is to be able to know, how do I start this conversation and what words can I actually use? And for me, I love this. I mean, I wrote some of it, but I'm glad I did because now I know what I could say when I started researching it, right?
Yeah, I also think with the talk part, especially for first-time parents, the sort of, here are some conversation starters to use with your kid. Here are some ways to talk to your kid about this kind of stuff. I think that's incredibly valuable. I'm really glad that we were able to include that.
Yeah, I always find that so helpful. The more language I can get, and that's why I love it when people provide scripts for conversations, for email, for anything. Like, just tell me what to say and I will say it. But it's hard to, especially when we're emotionally charged or triggered, to remember things in the moment, because this stuff is really weighs on us and it's just hard to get into our thinking brain. So that's really helpful. And then tell us for a moment about what engage is.
So engage, it's sometimes, I think, maybe hard to see the nuance between talk and engage, right? And talk is just starting to have the conversations about what you've noticed and observed. It's that, like, let's start saying this out loud so it's not just living in my head and in my notes and that kind of thing. Engage is where you really start moving forward with that. What do I do with all these observations? What do I do with all this information that I've gathered? Who can I talk to, so then we can figure out where do we go from here? It's that opportunity to, and that's one of the reasons we are so thrilled to have, developed this initiative with the American Academy of Pediatrics, is because who better to develop it with than the people that we want people to engage with, in addition to teachers and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's that next step after talk. And now
all right, so then we can hit let's begin. And then, so I shouldn't be talking, but I'm going to. Every page has these, every letter down here, note, observe, talk, engage. They all have a video and tools. And I'm going to actually skip ahead to observe because I wanted to specifically share one of the tools for that. So first of all, I also love the design of this. I really love the way Understood's rebranded, and I love all the graphics, and the visual look is really pleasing. But you've got these great observation tools, and I wanted to show this specifically. Could you tell us a little bit about this tool and how parents can use it. And this is free, by the way, everyone. This is just for you. This is for all of us to use and to share. So tell us about the observation tracker and the pattern tracker.
Bob, you were really involved in this one, am I right? In helping?
Yeah, I was kind of. I think that I was involved because this is the piece that I really care so much about, being kind of the school leader and educator, is if the parents come in with really good information about why they're concerned or what they're noticing that has made them concerned or curious or questioning, it is so much easier to provide the kind of support they're looking for and to get the right kind of help for their kids. So when you're in it, like Debbie was mentioning, it's emotionally loaded, you're concerned, you're frustrated. It's really hard to be clear about what you're seeing or then to be thinking about it clearly. So this tracker is really meant to help you figure out what it is you're seeing, and to look at when that's happening, where it's happening, with whom it's happening, all of those kinds of things that could give you an idea of what comes before that behavior or what comes after that behavior, or how long does this last? All of that sort of stuff that helps you just drill down and be more and more specific about what you're seeing and why it's concerning to you in some way. And the other thing that it allows you to do is keep track, right? So conveniently titled tracker, because it allows you to keep track of sort of, this is what I've seen, so this is what I've tried, and here's how that's gone, and here's the next thing I'm trying, and that. So when you get to that conversation on the talk part, where you're talking to your family or you're talking to others, and then when you get to engage with professionals, you're able to say, look, these are the kinds of things that I've tried. This is why I tried that. Here's what I'm seeing. And here is a pattern that I'm noticing. So, for some reason at, 4 o'clock every day, my kid is having this meltdown and this is concerning and that sort of stuff. And what I realized is, okay, probably need to feed the child at this point. So I'm going to do that. So we moved dinner time up for the whole family. Now we're doing that. We're seeing a reduction in this behavior. It was still concerning to me. Still might be something you want to talk about, but it's also helped you figure things out a little bit.
I think there are two other things that I want to note about this. The first is there's no right way to say what you're writing down, right? And I think that it's really important to note that you need to say it however you see it and however you say it. So there's nobody at the end is going to say to you, well, that's not written the way I need to hear it. It's written the way you see it and you experience it. And then I think the other thing about this is it is a downloadable tool, but it's also, if you don't want to download it, you can fill it in on your electronic device. You can fill it in on your computer. You can fill it in on your phone. So you don't actually have to download and print it, because you know what? We're all looking for printer ink right now, right? If we have kids at home for school, I don't know about you, but I don't know if my printer would actually print this at the moment, but I could do it on my phone. And that's super helpful to have available too.
I'm shocked my printer's not going off right now. I did ask my daughters not to print stuff during the Facebook Live thing, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily going to A, listen, or B, remember. So we'll see.
Did you put that in your tracker, Bob?
Yeah.
And then this pattern finder, like this to me was the thing that I struggled really to find patterns. And that was always something that was recommended to me by everyone. Well, when does this happen? What time? What are the, all of that stuff. And I was like, I can't, like, it would take me 3 days to be like, oh, I think maybe this is because of that. Like I couldn't make those connections in real time. And so just even having this to kind of prompt you through and help you identify potential triggers or reasons really for what's happening with our kids is so helpful.
And I think, when you're in the midst of this, for me, I think like it feels like it's happening all the time, even though it's not happening all the time. So to be able to say, this is when this started is really helpful to me, to be able to say, oh, wait, this is when I remember this starting. My emotional reaction's been going on all day long, but this happened in the morning before school is really helpful to be able to check that off.
Right. And also just to remember that this isn't, it does seem sometimes like my whole life is consumed with this. And it's like, actually, it was just a half hour earlier today, but it is, so it's good for that perspective too, which I like. Should we just, because you mentioned talk, just look at that for a minute and check out some of the conversation starters? So if we go to T, we go to talk. Are there any of these in particular that you would think I should click open?
I like this. I like any of these, to be honest. I think that conversation, the trouble with self-control, I think is probably a really apt one.
Well, it's such a hard topic.
It's a tough topic, right?
Yeah, for right now, especially.
So I mean, one of the things about this one is these are the kinds of things that can feel really personal. They can feel like, this is something that I should be able to handle, and I should be able to manage on my own. So we don't always have those conversations, and we don't always know how to have that conversation. For me, to be able to say like, okay, I'm going to start this conversation by saying, and see, this is where we have to scroll down because I can't remember what it says.
Okay. You tell me. Yeah.
Okay, right there, we're good. So, to be able to just start the conversation and ask for the time to meet, right? To say, hi, I'm Amanda, and my son's in your classroom. My son is, is friends with your son, and I'm worried because I'm seeing some things around self-control. I'm worried I'm seeing him sort of have outbursts. I'm worried, and I'm wondering if you'd be willing to talk to me about it, right? So it gives you that opportunity to open up the conversation, and then it goes through the whole process of it. Like, once you get there, what do you say? And it's, you can say, thanks for talking with me. You can say, I'm really nervous to have this conversation, but at least then you can say, so I noticed that when the kids are playing together, my son's really having a hard time, and he'll throw things across the room when they're at our house. Are you seeing like that at your house too when they play together? So you can have those interactive kind of conversations. And so it's about, starting the conversation, sharing the information, getting information in return, and then leaving that open and saying like, this was so helpful. This was really helpful. Appreciate you listening to me. I may come back and have this conversation again if I need to. But for me, that's a little bit easier because I've been doing this for a lot of years, both personally and professionally. For some people, like my husband reads these and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go write an email. I know how to do this now, right? He may actually be watching this, so I'm sorry if I just outed you there. Husband who may be watching this, but it's helpful. You can just take the language and adapt it to your own situation. And I just love that.
The other thing that's really good about this for me, Amanda, is that even before you're going to talk to someone about it, as you're reading through these and as you're thinking through these, one of the concerns you always have kind of initially is, gosh, whoever I'm talking to is going to judge, right? Especially around something like self-control, right? How do I talk about that in a way that is not going to have the teacher be like, well, if you were a better parent, this would, well, first of all, I guarantee you most teachers, in fact, almost no teachers I've ever met actually think that way, but most parents, including myself, believe that's what's going to happen when you go in to talk to somebody about this. But once you kind of process this in your own mind with these starters and the way the conversations flow here, the asking about it, the starting, the sharing, and the getting information, and then the making a plan, it helps you realize that there's nothing judgy about this, right? This is me and you having a conversation about something that's concerning me about this child who we both care about and want to help. So I think it can put you at ease right away before you even decide I'm going to ask for this conversation.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to stop sharing the screen because I think looking at our smiling faces is a little more compelling after a few minutes. But anyway, this is so great. I think what I'm really just feeling so much is that, when we're kind of sorting this out, it does, what's going on with our kids, and we're just realizing there are some symptoms my goodness.
I would say signs, right?
Signs. That's the word.
Things, right? Yeah.
There are signs that there are things going on that we may not understand. They may be triggering fear in us, overwhelm, that deer in headlights, like, what do I do? We may be getting mixed information from people and advice from well-meaning relatives. And this is just such messy territory to navigate. And so that's what I really just appreciate, is this makes you feel like not only have I found a place where my experience is seen and understood, but now I've got, like, I know what to do. Like, I've got it's not going to solve or, tell you exactly what to do, but it's going to get you to where you need to be so that you can move forward with confidence, and you can move forward with that sense of peace. Like, okay, I'm not alone. There is a way to navigate this, and there is support.
And if you think about the fact that we actually created an entire system, right? This initiative, this memory device, the American Academy of Pediatrics understood, we sat down and did this together. You're not alone, right? We're doing this for a reason. It's not just for you. One person is using it. It's for all of the people out there who really are needing to use it. And I think that alone can be really comforting to realize that there's a need for this. It's not just because we thought it would be. And we did, did some research with YouGov to find out like what the pain points were for parents. So we had a better idea that here's where parents and families are really struggling in what they're seeing. So we were able to have not just this idea, but the data to back up that it was necessary, which was, just it's an enormous thing to know that, we talk about this as 1 in 5 kids who learn anything differently. In my house, it's more than that, and it's like in some people's, the numbers don't come out evenly, right? So it's not like 1 in 5, you go every 5 houses and it's going to be one house out of every 5. It's all over, and we need to have these conversations. So I think that's comforting in itself to know this tool was needed and it's helpful.
I'm wondering what you found in the research that was kind of the biggest, you talked about with the pain points, like what is the biggest area of concern where people are just hitting a block or that was creating the most stress for them early on?
So we did this research in like late July, early August. So we were coming into it right about the time that people were starting to spend more time with their families and seeing all of this. And they had just come off the end of a school year, whatever the end of that school year looked like. And so a lot of it was about behavior changes, not being able to take breaks from social media or video games, and things like having trouble sticking to a routine and being more tired and struggling to read and those kinds of things, which could or could not be a sign that you need to worry about. But the thing that was really, really striking to me is that 79% of parents who were noticing these things in their kids said that they were concerned. They had concerns, but only 28% of them were actually seeking support or guidance from their healthcare provider. That's a big discrepancy, right? So that's a lot of people who are noticing things and very few who are speaking up. So to me, that was a data point that really stuck out. Yeah.
Bob, I'm going to switch gears and ask you a question because of your expertise and work in the world as an educator and all the work you've done working in schools and supporting families.
With that buildup, I better have an answer, Debbie.
Well,
Go for it.
I'm just thinking, right now, I think so many families are struggling to know how to communicate things that are not going well, especially with hybrid or remote learning. And people are afraid to speak up, or they just don't know how to navigate that or how to ask for or advocate for changes or adaptations to what has been presented. So do you have any kind of general guidance or best practices as parents try to design a school scenario right now that will best support their kids?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'll say is when you're concerned about something like that, like doing nothing is pretty much always the wrong answer, right? So, and it's pretty much the only wrong answer. So doing nothing is definitely not the way to go. The question then becomes, what do you do, right? And so reaching out to the school to have a conversation, use a tool like Take Note. This is perfect for a pandemic because you're there more, you get that. And it's not a whole bunch of time and effort and energy. It's just a lot of sort of situational, occasional stuff, which kind of works with all of this, right? But I feel like, making sure that you are actually asking, and if you're not getting a response or the response you're getting is not helpful, think through, am I being specific enough? Is what I'm talking about organized enough for them to actually help me? Like, it's a fact that teachers and schools and doctors and everybody else are particularly stressed right now, just like parents are, right? So the amount of time and attention and the bandwidth and all of that really is problematic. You're not making that up. So you've got to be better prepared kind of for those conversations maybe than you would have been even a little bit ago. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't still expect a response, right? And if you don't get the response from the first person you ask, then you go to the next person, right? And you can move sort of from there. Having the conversations is what's actually going to get you the support, because the person on the other end of the conversation no longer knows the answer either. Right? So teachers and schools, they are routine-based, structured environments, structured professions, that sort of stuff. That structure has been interrupted. So the point now is the communication really is even so much more important, because you're going to construct the answer together. It's not going to be the parent telling the teacher what needs to happen, and it's not going to be the school telling the family what needs to happen. It's going to be figuring out, here's where the school is and here's where the family is. Here's what we can do together to try to help the kid we care about, right? So that's sort of what I would say about it.
That's interesting. You raised something that didn't even occur to me, which is there are things that schools may not have thought about yet because they're thinking so much about other things, right? So some of these, that's such a good point, that some of the answers may not exist because they haven't been, the questions haven't been asked yet. Like, it hasn't been brought up. And it doesn't necessarily mean, I'm like thinking this out loud as we're having this, like, this is what Facebook Live is for, right? Is to have these conversations just like this. It's a really good way of thinking about it, that if you don't ask the question or you don't bring up what you're thinking, you can't know whether or not anybody else has thought about it. It's that thing that we say to our kids, right? I don't know what's on your mind until you tell me what's on your mind.
Right.
It's the same kind of thing. Yeah.
And if you're, a lot of times families, in my experience, will be like, well, the teacher's been teaching for 20 years. Like, she knows all of this. Right? She knows what to do when a kid does this. I'm just going to trust that they're going to do this and stuff like that. I guarantee you right now, there are no teachers out there who feel completely competent, completely expert, completely knowledgeable about what's happening, because none of us have ever seen this before, right? Nobody has. So you've got to have those conversations. You've got to construct these solutions kind of together at this moment in this time, right?
Oh, good. That's so helpful. I mean, this is what I'm hearing from people more than anything right now. And right now, in this, because now kids have been back for a few weeks and.
Right. And sometimes it's simple. Like, I had a conversation with a teacher not too long ago, last week before, they all run together, right? But not too long ago. And she was saying, listen, there's this family and there's this kid and what can you do and stuff like that. And my first question was, well, the accessibility features on Google Classroom, how is that working? And her response was, what accessibility features? Like, that kind of thing, right? And so there's probably a really simple solution there, but she didn't think about it until the parent asked the question, and the parent didn't suggest that, and she didn't know about it. So she asked a friend, and that's how a solution was kind of generated in a particular situation. That's how the world is working right now. So don't do nothing. And if the first thing you do doesn't work, then try the next thing, and together you'll figure this out. And just your kids, your kid, and the schools know teaching and learning, the people there, the doctors know health and well-being and development and stuff like that. Like, none of us have lost what we came into this knowing, right? But the way it's applied is looking a lot different. So you're going to have to get rid of a lot of your assumptions and kind of co-create again.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to add something to that, Amanda?
I think I was just going to add that, and if the first thing you try doesn't work, don't assume it's you.
No.
Don't assume it's you, and it's okay to try again in a different way with a different person. I think we often get discouraged and think, I tried, I said it, I didn't get a response and that I wanted. And so I guess I just failed, right? I mean, and I think to Bob's point, try again, try someone else, try a little bit differently. I'm learning that right now. I'm learning, like, I have to rephrase things because I need to make sure that the person on the other end is understanding what I'm saying as opposed to what I think I'm saying.
Yeah, that sounds like the subtitle of my memoir.
Well, you know how you go, Debbie, you know how you go to meetings and there's a little conversation at the beginning about shared norms.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how is this all going to work? How are we going to work together? How's this meeting going to go? What are sort of the shared expectations of each other and of myself and stuff like that, right? That's what we don't have right now around education, right? The norms, the shared norms have been broken. Mm-hmm. Not by us, but by the context. Mm-hmm. And so how do we reconstruct those shared norms like you do at the beginning of each of those meetings, right? You just have to take time and you have to keep at it. That's all.
That's great. I love that metaphor. That's super helpful. So just a reminder, if anyone's watching this and you have a question for Amanda or Bob, just leave it in the comments. Otherwise, I'm going to ask one or two more questions and then we will wrap up. I guess I just wanted to ask, really, if there are any other kind of tips or best practices right now for how parents can help their kids. What I'm hearing also is just kids who are really struggling. Their grades might be tanking. Their motivation is fairly non-existent. And parents, I'm getting a lot of, parents who are very anxious about what does this mean? And, so a lot of what I'm talking to parents about is take a breath, lower the bar, just kind of trying to help everyone get back to a place of relative emotional safety here. But any other, besides this kind of trying to get what we need and collaborate with the schools and get an alignment, any other best practices?
I think so. With the take note, that T also stands for talk to your child, right? And I think that's the step that I would really stress. Stress is probably the wrong word when I'm talking about stress, but that's one part that I would really emphasize, is to have the conversation with your child too. They know their grades are tanking. They know they don't feel motivated. They may not know that you're noticing it. And again, like, finding those solutions together starts with having the conversation. And it doesn't have to be an accusatory conversation by any means. It's I've noticed this, I'm a little worried. Let's talk about this. Let's talk through. So I think that's a starting point, is to have that conversation with your child. I mean, it's going to sound different depending on your child's age, right? Because kids talk to you differently and you present information differently depending on their age. But I also think, so that's one thing. And I think that the age really matters in some of the other ways too, because some of the motivation and some of the grades and some of that around remote learning is around, are we giving kids what they need to learn based on their developmentally appropriate age, right? I have a 10-year-old with ADHD. He cannot sit through 30 minutes straight of work. And I know that. I expected it anyway. I wasn't thinking through. So, we shifted gears and I now have a timer for him that says, like, set this timer for 2 minutes. You can get up, you can go walk around, you can do what you need, but in 2 minutes you're going back, or 3 minutes or 5, whatever he needs, those kinds of things where I think we have to think through. The setting is different, which means we can make adjustments that we wouldn't necessarily make before. And that's an opportunity. You know, it feels weighty, but it's actually an opportunity to think through, actually, how do I make this environment work for my child in a way that can keep them motivated, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's one thing I would definitely say is sort of thinking about that way.
So what's running through my head, so I'm going to try to find a way to do this without teaching a grad school course, but one thing I'm hoping is that this whole like confusion and different ways of having to do things and rethinking and challenging assumptions and all of that presents something of an opportunity, right? Because one of the things that you don't think of too often, but that is really, really true is we have come as a society to conflate the ideas of schooling and learning. And schooling does a lot more than just learning, right? It's not all just about the learning, right? But in this context, what really is important is that learning, right? And so if you look at a school curriculum, maybe my impression is different than yours, but I think we're both going to agree that not 100% of the things that are included in a curriculum are essential, right, for a child's development or learning, right? And so prioritizing is one of the best pieces of advice I can give to families. Like, you know your kid really well. Focus on the things about the schooling that's happening in such a different way right now that you really believe are the most important for them. Get advice from the teachers, get advice from the school, pay attention to what messages the teacher is giving you in terms of what they think are important. But in the end, do some prioritizing if things are overwhelming, right? And if your child can't switch gears and switch gears and switch gears from virtual class to virtual class, and the teachers are giving an overwhelming amount of work because they feel like the kids need to keep up and stuff like that, you're the parent, put the brakes on, right? It's not worth it. We've created a schooling system where every minute is accounted for and there's something that has to happen in that minute. Learning isn't actually about that, right? Learning is a long run. It's not the short game. And so anything that your child doesn't get to move incrementally and keep up and stuff like that is something that will be gotten later on, right? These 6 months, this 1 year is not going to torpedo your child's life, right? Learning is a long game. Education is a long game. Only schooling breaks it down into these artificial segments. So keep that in mind and, do what you need to do to keep moving on the things that you feel are most important for your child. And if 5th grade grades start to tank, then 5th grade grades tank, right? And by 7th grade, nobody's going to remember what 5th grade grades look like. So you just keep going. I mean, my daughter is applying for colleges and stuff like that. Colleges don't even want to see the SAT or the ACT or, anything like that. And the schools are given passes on the report card instead of a B or a C or whatever. Like, it's, this whole idea of how we evaluate learning is kind of out the window at the moment. So don't focus on it. Focus on quality over quantity and focus on meaningful over just experience, right?
And this is why I like working with Bob. This is why.
Yeah, I mean, yes, thank you. This is what along the lines of what I've been saying, but it has a lot more weight when it comes from you. So
no, it just sounds more like grad school. That was my concern today. That was the whole concern.
It didn't.
It's great. It's in the midst of everything we're going through right now. It's just really difficult to see parents putting so much pressure on themselves right now and just feeling so much worry and concern. And, I'm always talking about zooming out and looking at the long game and what our goals are for these kids. And as someone who homeschooled for 6 years, I also know that, when a child is motivated, they can learn something in like a week that it might take in a traditional learning environment a year to do, and they won't enjoy it as much. So yes, thank you for that. Collective deep breaths for everybody.
Exhale.
Yeah. So, all right, before we say goodbye, tell us how we, there aren't a ton of people watching this live. More are going to watch it later. We've got a big community in here. How can the Tilt community in this Facebook group, 5,000 plus, how can we support this Take Note initiative? Tell us what you want us to do.
I would say two things. The first is go to u.org/take note to check it out yourself. I would challenge you to share it with somebody else, right? 5,000 people, share it with one other person. Think of the exponential impact that can have.
It doubles. I thought about it real quick while you said it.
Thank you.
The grad school thing, yeah.
There's math in action, right? That's a learning experience for you right there. So I mean, and I would say use that observation tracker. I mean, just give it a spin and think through how relieving it is to see it in front of you instead of having it sit in your head and in your heart.
Yeah, that's great. So, all right, you guys heard that. I'm going to just throw down a challenge. I'm going to ask everyone in this group to go to Take Note, to play around with it, watch the videos. They're all short. They're like 2.5 minutes or less. They're great. You just watch them. Check out the tools, engage with the observation tracker, and share it with at least one person in your world. If you are the member of another group, like a Facebook group that's local, regional, share it there. This is a free tool. This is completely free. It has a lot of legs, and it's going to be just what somebody in your world needs right now. So that's my challenge. And if you do share it, please let us know also in the comments that you did that, because this is how movements get started, people. So Amanda and Bob, I just want to thank you again I've gotten to hang out with you quite a bit in the past few weeks, which is a pleasure for me, but thank you so much for coming by and doing a little Facebook Live with us today and walking us through this.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts or anything?
I will just say I'm a part of this group. So if there are any questions that come up after the fact, tag me and I'll see if I can help you out. That's totally fine.
It's a good idea. And, it's one of the reasons that I love this, Debbie, and what you do is that the community is so important, right? And, at Understood, I'll put on my kind of businessy hat here, is we really, really, really do care about the community, and we want to make sure that what we're doing resonates and is useful and feels right to you. And on every page of Take Note, when you go to u.org.take note, there's a please tell us what you think sort of link. Do that. Like if the 5,000 people in this group actually did that and gave that feedback to our teams, our work is so much better. So take that time for us. If you want to do something kind of for Understood, do that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you here next week for another Facebook Live. All right. Bye everyone.